everybody. Happy Friday, April 17th, 2020, right amid the COVID-19 crisis. But we've got a great webcast coming up for you all today. Watershed Hacks for Uncertain Times. I'm Cecilia Lane. I am the former Stormwater Coordinator at the Chesapeake Stormwater Network, also known as Watershed Gal in my previous life. And I'm making my return visit to join you all today for this fun webcast. So thanks for joining us. Bear with me as I, figure out how we do this technically. Sorry, David. Same thing happened. Okay, moving on. So this is our first webcast in this Watershed Hacks for Uncertain Times, this new series. Today we'll be talking about victory rain gardens and home meadows. So things you can do around the house while you're stuck at home that'll be environmentally friendly. We'll talk a little bit about the Watershed Hacks webcast series and why this is a little different than traditional CSN webcast series. Again, today we'll be talking about victory rain gardens and home meadows and how you can install those around your property. And then more importantly, some of the tips and tricks from experts who are used to doing this type of work and different ways to approach these practices. Some free resources and tips at the end that will help you design and install your own rain garden or meadow. And special topics with the hacker in chief. We've got a great crew today to talk about this stuff. So why is this Watershed Hacks for Uncertain Times, why is this webcast series a little bit different than what CSN is used to doing? We are all stuck at home for the most part, and we're stuck with lots of extra time on our hands. Maybe we're not commuting, maybe the weather is getting nice, we want to get outside, we want to do some environmentally fun things around the house. And we're stuck at home with our families, and we're looking for ways to engage them in activities that will ultimately help with the environment in our yards. So we're trying to make this as easy and painless and fun and interactive as possible. So we really value your input as well. If you've got tips and tricks that you have used in the past that would help people, we'd love to hear about those in the chat box. We will be doing a few more of these webcasts as part of this series. The next one, they're all tentative at the moment, but will be confirmed by Monday of next week. And at that point, we'll open registration. So you can't register right now, but check back soon and you will be able to register. David will be sending out a newsletter to the network announcing these webcasts and the registration. So keep an eye out for that. Right now, looking at April 24th to talk about tree canopy and tree planting and how you can engage your family with those activities. Thursday, April 30th, so that'll be a little different in the schedule. Most of these, sorry, I should have said, will take place, and David, please jump in here, Fridays at 11, is that correct? So most webcasts will be on Fridays from 11 to 12:15-ish. With the exception of April 30th, which will be a Thursday. And that's where we'll be talking about stormwater art. So different things you can do that, again, are environmentally friendly, but with an art focus. You can see that picture in the bottom, which is a stencil. I guess, help me out here. This is a hydrophilic stencil. So when water lands on it, it will show up the stencil that you painted. So that might be a really fun activity for kids. On May 7th, we'll talk about sustainable lawns and family gardening. So again, check back and look to register for those next week. Am I doing this right? Oh dear, I did it again. I'm sorry. Okay. Oh dear. Okay, so today's, and we have a phone call. Today's All-Star Cast. I'm Cecilia Lane. As I mentioned earlier, I used to work for the Chesapeake Stormwater Network. I was formerly known as Watershed Gal. I'm doing the moderating today. I'll be moderating, watching the chat box, trying to answer questions, hand those questions over to our expert hackers on the webcast team. We have Tom Schuler, who is the Executive Director of the Chesapeake Stormwater Network and the coordinator for the Chesapeake the Urban Stormwater Work Group at the Chesapeake Bay program. So he is a big lover of rain gardens. I believe he has few, maybe 5 on his property, which is pretty impressive. Although
The big news today, though, Cecilia, is I finally wore a belt for the first time in 6 weeks. But that isn't a happy story because I'm no longer the Cal Ripken of sweatpants.
at least he's got pants on, right? You know, that's a good thing. I'm not sure I've been wearing much pants during this coronavirus. Resource teaser, David Wood, the stormwater coordinator, also at the Chesapeake Stormwater Network, Tom's right-hand man. They are the terrible duo or dynamic duo. I'm not sure which one is the right one. And our expert hacker, Beth Ginter, who is the executive director of the Chesapeake Bay Landscaping Professional Certification Program, the CBLP, I believe, if I got that right. And that's a program that aims to standardize the design and installation and maintenance of these low impact development or environmentally friendly stormwater practices that you can do at the residential scale. Did I capture that correctly, Beth? Is there anything else you want to add?
That's very close. Really well done, Cecilia. Excellent. Thank you.
All right, well, feel free to jump in and tell a little bit more about your backgrounds, you know, as you see fit. And then, as I mentioned earlier, we really appreciate this to be a collaborative, interactive webcast. So again, if you have ideas from your own experience, whether it's tree planting or rain garden design or installation or plants that work, plants that take over your rain garden, we want to hear about it, and feel free to jump in on the chat box. Okay, so we've got a couple poll questions here because we want to know what is happening with you all. I want to hear how you all are doing. So first of all, just for some context regarding today's webcast, how big is your lot? Do you live in an apartment, an RV, or maybe a mobile home? You don't really have much of a lot. Is it a little bit more than a postage stamp, a sixth of an acre, a quarter of an acre, half of an acre? Or are you part of the 1%? So if you could just let us know in the box on your screen.
There's no screen.
No screen, okay, that's good to know. David, is there something I need to push?
No, how do I access the webinar? I'm on my phone.
Oh, okay, a little technical troubleshooting here.
Yeah, there's a link that should have gone out in your email when you signed up for the webcast, and then there would have been a reminder email that would have been auto sent probably yesterday that would have a Zoom access link. So we use Zoom for the webcast platforms if you want to join. But if you aren't able to get on today, we are recording today's webcast, and I'll have it posted on our website so you can always catch the visual part, you know, probably on Monday.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
All right, very good. So for those of you who can see the screen, if you would like to fill out this poll, oh, geez, I did it again. Sorry, Tom. Sorry about this, everyone. So that was our first poll. Our second poll, we're trying to figure out, and David, I'm not seeing any poll results. Are you?
I do have the poll results, so I'm happy to share with you. So in terms of our lot size, we have about 33% of folks are on that half-acre lot size. We've got a handful that are on the postage stamp or smaller, and about 15% are in the 1%, apparently, of our audience. So
oh, very nice. Well, that's great.
Let's ask them for money then.
Yeah, don't forget to donate. That's great because a lot of the practices we use are, well, specifically with rain gardens, but as part of the series that we'll be talking about, are really well suited for those smaller lots when you are space constrained. Okay, our second poll question today is trying to figure out how's everyone's mental health doing as part of this coronavirus. You know, which of the following statements most reflects where your head is at this morning? Carol Baskin definitely killed her husband. Well, I'm not sure anyone disagrees with that statement. Have you decided to cut your own hair or dye your roots? You know, we're hearing a lot about this and how dangerous of a move that can be. Creating a fake office space so that their background on your Zoom meetings looks a little bit better than reality does. And only a week to go until the NFL draft. I think this is going to be a virtual game. So yeah, unfortunately, I'm missing sports big time. I don't know about the rest of you.
Everybody on here is worried about their Zoom. So, we got half of our audience just looking for fake bookshelves at this point.
All right. There's some business ideas out there for you all who's looking to make a little cash. So, all right. And so with that, I think I will hand it over to the rain garden guru, Tom Schuler. Take it away.
Excellent. Well,
Tom, since we keep backing out, I'm going to go ahead. I'll just move the slides along for you when we go, since it keeps exiting for some reason.
excellent. Control was never my forte. Well, welcome everybody, and glad to have you. And glad to have Cecilia back in the game, if only for afternoon. We're assuming that most people on this call are pretty familiar with rain gardens and how they work and whatnot, but basically they're just ways to treat water from your rooftop or a parking lot in a small depression that we plant and make beautiful. They're very nice to look at. They attract pollinators. They're not a big deal, but they're not, they take a little bit of effort to work out. So we came together with some hacks. And the first hack, David, is becoming a downspout detective, which is going around your house and figuring out which of your downspouts are going to work for a rain garden and which ones aren't. So I have 4 photos on this slide. On the upper left-hand side, you can see the downspout toward the top, and that's a great one because it's right next to the driveway, but you see a beautiful turf area, which is an ideal candidate to treat that stormwater before it hits the street. Same is true on the right-hand side on the top, where you see the white downspout coming down. But that's a little bit trickier because in most cases it would just kind of run over to the driveway. So that's where you can put a flexible connector pipe and kind of move it over to the side or send it over your neighbor if you don't like them. Actually, our lawyer said that's not recommended. On the bottom left-hand side, you can see the downspout. And then if you have really great eyesight, you can see a little bit of hole right at the street level. That's where it comes out. And so that one, they plumbed it all the way to the street. So it's not an ideal candidate for a rain garden unless you dig up that pipe and use it for a rain garden, which is certainly something that can be done pretty easily. And then on the bottom right-hand side is a real loser's house where the downspout comes down on a totally impervious area into the street. So that would not be a good candidate for a rain garden unless by some got a rubble bouncer missile and broke up the impervious cover. But it might be a good candidate for a rain barrel. So we won't talk about rain barrels today, but if you can't do rain gardens, rain barrels are an option.
Possibly even a planter box, which is sort of a retention in the bottom, so rain garden elevated. Doesn't have a lot of capacity, but it does get a little bit of the production that we're looking for. This provides a nice plants for habitat and air quality.
Why, thank you, Cecilia. So pleasant to have you back. The other hack is it's not only following your downspout, but being able to read what's on the ground in your home ground and figuring out where the water lines are, the natural gas lines, your sewer lines, and the most important thing at this time is the underground cable that delivers your internet and TV, storm drain pipes, and whatnot. So one of the things to keep in mind is it may look like an outstanding area for where a rain garden could go, but it turns out when you start digging, you're going to blow up your entire neighborhood by hitting a gas line, or you're going to create a sewer spill, then that's not a really good idea. So when you actually start to dig, as many of you are aware, there are the local missed utility numbers to call, and they're usually pretty good. I'm not sure right now whether they can come out in the normal 24 to 48 hours, but usually they'll go and mark where the utilities are so you can feel safe and confident. Next one, please. So the next hack is what I call a post-hole digger soil test, where you can do a lot of fancy things, but the big thing is to get a post-hole digger, which is shown on the left-hand side. It's got the two poles, and then it's got the two shovel things in the bottom, and you go whack and dig down. It's really good if you want to build up your massive pecs and look like a hunk like me. But even if you don't want to be a hunk like me, it helps you figure out your maximum digging depth. How far can you go down in your yard at that specific area? Can you get down to the 18 or 24 inches that really makes a rain garden work? You can do it in 12 to 18 inches, but you just have to make it a little bit bigger. And I think David will show a design example in a minute about that. But the other thing is when you're taking the post hole, you go down in like 6-inch lifts and you take it out, dump it on a tarp. It gives you a kind of a soil profile of what kind of material you have. And if you're like most folks, the first 2, 3, 6, maybe 8 inches is reasonably good topsoil. And then below that, you have this crummy clay stuff, which is very hard to infiltrate, and it's sometimes hard to excavate. So you really want to figure, basically, I hate to discriminate, but you want to separate your good topsoils from your bad subsoils. And we'll talk a little bit about some hacks for that later on. So next thing is with that post hole, you've just dug a nice hole that's 18 to 24 inches deep, so you can measure your soil infiltration rate, which is very important in the design of rain gardens. So you can see in my home addition here, I took out a tape measure to estimate the depth of my hole. I went to my water faucet and got a drywall bucket, filled the hole up to capacity, let it drain, and then filled it up again so it was saturated. And then I just measure how many hours it takes for it to completely clear out. And that gives me a reasonably good estimate of how my soil infiltration rate is going to be without having to, send it off to a lab or do something really complicated. But it also, again, gives you a sense of where it's going. So that also gives you some input data, which David will explain how you can actually calculate your infiltration rate for design. So David, back to you.
Great. So we do actually have a couple of these really handy tools available, and these are all in the resources section on the website for today's webcast. They're already on there if you wanted to download them and play around with them yourself. I'll pull them up so that we can take a look at what they look like. But, this basically saves you, from everyone who has been doing, their homeschooling and all of that kind of stuff and is sick of dealing with elementary school math, or maybe it's middle school math or something like that. Sort of takes some of the difficulty out of the equation for you. So this is what the sheet looks like. Hopefully you all can see the PDF on the screen right now for our infiltration rate. But basically, if Tom is feeling particularly strong today and he goes all the way down to 24 inches for his hole, he can just make a note of when he filled the hole up. So we'll stick with the example that's on the right-hand side there, and we'll say he started bright and early and poured his water in around 8:15 in the morning. It takes, until after dinner that evening to fully drain. So we're at 8:15 in the evening now. So it took us about 12 hours to fill the hole. And you can see what happens is when we fill in our fillable spreadsheet, it goes ahead and calculates the infiltration rate for you. So we're with the 12 hours and 24 inches, we're at about 2 inches per hour. The important thing to pay attention to is, if your infiltration rate, and this is the note at the bottom there, is less than about ½ an inch per hour, you probably need to increase the surface area of your rain garden because you're going to have trouble dewatering that rain garden. You may also want to take a look at maybe some other sites or test some other areas in your yard. If you have multiple downspouts or multiple areas that you can play with, that maybe you can get some better infiltration. So just something to be mindful of.
Yeah, because we're not trying to dig a hole and put a bunch of water in and breed a bunch of mosquitoes, right, David? We want to see that it's really important that you have good infiltration rates so that that water drains within a timely manner. And when we say a timely manner, we're really saying you should see complete dewatering within 72 hours. But we really see these things drain much quicker than that, given how those soils work and how the vegetation utilizes some of that stormwater.
So then once you have your infiltration rate determined and you're feeling comfortable about where you're locating your garden in terms of your soil drainage, then it comes time to figuring out how you want to size your rain garden. And so we have sort of our small McMansion drawing here of your different roof surfaces, but there's basically, we have a similar tool for, determining based on your rooftop area, how large you need to size your rain garden. And then we'll talk a little bit about the handy hack for the tarp method. But I'm going to pull back up here our PDFs. So to take us through another example, let's say now Tom has done his infiltration rate and he has decided or determined that based on his roof area, he has about 2,650 square feet of roof area that could possibly drain to a rain garden. Now that, of course, depending on the the area, is going to be split up. That's not all going to a single downspout. Let's say there's 5 different downspouts draining that pretty large roof size. So we're looking at an area draining the rain garden about 530 square feet per downspout. So that gives us a general sense of what we need to be able to capture. So now, in order to decide how large the rain garden itself needs to be, that number automatically carries down to the second table on our PDF. So you've got your 530 square feet draining to your rain garden. And then we're going to assume that your rain garden is going to have a ponding area of at least about 6 inches, which is what we kind of use for our hacks and our design throughout today. And then you're going to be capturing that first inch of rainfall. So there's an engineering factor that's already built into the spreadsheet for you, which is the 0.12. Multiplies it across, and so you find out that you need 64 square feet of area for your rain garden. So it makes it nice and easy for you. All right. And so the last hack that we have in terms of our spreadsheet tools are our fillable PDFs that are available for download right now on the website. Is, now you kind of know what size you have in terms of the surface area for your rain garden, and your infiltration rate. So now you need to figure out what you're actually going to fill your rain garden with. So you've dug your hole, and we'll talk about the actual construction hacks in a second. But you kind of need to know what you need to order and have on hand for when you go to build. So we have this other spreadsheet where we can figure out your digging depth, or you enter your digging depth, ponding depth, and your topsoil, your good soils and your bad soils, and then figure out what materials you need from that. So we can look at this one. I won't walk through it separately on a spreadsheet. We've already got it kind of filled in for you here. But basically, when you enter in, if you look at the top couple of rows, this is what we just talked about in our design. So we've dug down to 24 inches. We wanted that 6 inches of ponding depth. And then we were able to save about 6 inches of pretty good topsoil. But we need about 12 to 18 inches of subsoil to fill in. And so that runs through and it spits out a couple of numbers here for you. It specifically tells you that you need to get rid of about 18 wheelbarrow full, that 10.7 7 number of subsoil that you're going to have to dispose of somewhere else in your lawn. This is the stuff that's pretty poor quality. It's not going to drain very well. It also lets you know how much mulch you're probably going to need to order to cover the square footage based on that 64 square foot area. And then it also tells you how much sand you're going to order. So we're trying to get for these, home rain gardens about a 50-50 mix. Sort of the easy way to do it is to shovel in a shovel full of your good topsoil and a shovel full of your sand, roughly evenly. It's okay if you have a little bit more sand, but that should give you a pretty good idea of about how much you're going to order. The last area that you can fill in there at the bottom is for the number of inlets that you want to have to your rain garden. If you have 2 inlets, so you're going to have about 2/10 of a ton of that river stone, which helps provide that stability at your inlet to make sure you're not kind of washing out or getting that erosion when you have the water coming in. So more inlets, you just kind of keep adding 2/10 of a ton for your river stone, but it'll calculate it for you if you would like. All right, so Tom, hand it back to you.
Thanks. Yeah, in terms of constructing rain gardens, there's 2 options. This is the do-it-yourself option that we'll talk about, but you can also hire contractors to do it. And when we go through the resources section in just a few minutes, we have a great list of contractors that have been certified Chesapeake Bay landscaping professionals who can do it for you if you don't want to sweat like I do. But in the photos you see in front of you, basically on the very top, you see the materials that I used: a drywall bucket, a good root axe to get through the roots as I'm digging down, shovels, rakes, and picks to get through that clay layer. On the far left-hand side, you can see the connector pipe from my downspout. And one of the good rules of thumb is you want to have to take the roof water and move it at least 10 feet away from your foundation so you don't get basement flooding or seepage or any damage, particularly if you have a basement, but even if you don't, you want to move it away from your house. And so we just put some black plastic down underneath the river stone, and then it sends it into the rain garden. The other trick that I've used is what I call the 2 tarp method, where when you're digging it out, you throw your good soils on one tarp and your bad soils on the other, and that helps you, so you don't mix it all together. It helps you manage your high quality stuff. Because when David was talking about 10 or 11 wheelbarrow loads of clay soil to get rid of, that's a lot of stuff. You can kind of create a little mound in the back, like you're part of the Natchez mound culture of the Mississippian or something, but it can create some stuff. So those are some of the construction hacks. Maybe in the sharing section later on, people can add theirs. The next slide goes over the numerous steps. We invented a 12-step program for it. And I won't go into details right now. They're all outlined in some of the resources that David will profile in just a minute. But typically, I will point the hardest steps, and the hardest steps are usually the digging, but even the digging isn't as tough as separating the turf from the topsoil. And that's like the most, I use my hands, and usually by the end of it, my hands are completely messed up. So if anyone has any good hacks for figuring out how to dethatch or get rid of the separating the turf from the topsoil, we'd love to hear from you. And in the various documents, we provided our own that actually Cecilia and I wrote 7 years ago, if you can believe that. Back when I was in this really bad time in my life when I was using Comic Sans font. It was a little cry for help, but I'm much better now. But if we go to the next slide. The last thing is just, what are you in for when you have a rain garden? What sort of maintenance and upkeep do you need to do? And generally speaking, it's not too much, but it's not something you can just walk away from. So in the first growing season, it almost invariably happens that you finish planting it and then you go into 3 or 4 weeks without any rain. And so you do need to water it a bit, hopefully in the early morning or late afternoon. And it really kind of feels embarrassing when you got a hose out there and you're watering a rain garden. You can just see your neighbors laughing at you in the background. But beyond that, maybe a little bit of mulch touch-up and some spot weeding. You know, the first year, like a good romance, is no problem at all. But the next slide is the first winter and the start of the second. You have to, at the end of the season, cutting back your perennials or waiting later in the winter so the birds can eat the seeds and use the cover. That's always a big argument between my wife and I about when to do that. In the springtime, we rake out some of the existing mulch over the bed and clean out any debris from either the inlets or the outlets. The mulch usually is good for that first and second year, although you usually have to do a little bit more weeding. But probably the number one issue that I had, at least in mine, is that getting the water to my rain gardens, that sometimes my gutters or my downspouts became clogged and I had to get up on a ladder and scare everybody in the neighborhood. So that's the upkeep. And then the next slide is the third growing season and thereafter. By then, if you're still using mulch, that layer is pretty much decomposed and needs to be replaced. But it's kind of bushy, so this is a great opportunity to split and transplant your favorite plants to either other parts of your yard, or if you're really kind, to give them to your neighbors. I'll tell you a funny story. My wife has a church group called the Guardians of Eden. Pretty clever. I thought it was a motorcycle gang myself, but we invited them over to borrow plants. And I've never seen these very otherwise nice ladies. Once she said, yeah, you can take anything from the yard. It was like a moonscape real quickly. But no, I think it's a good way to share plants, and they do get bushy, particularly the trees and shrubs. So usually by year 3 and certainly by year 4, a little bit of thinning and pruning is in order. And when we have time in the sharing, or maybe when Beth gets on in a few minutes, we can talk about other hacks for the mature rain garden, because so much of our effort is focused on putting them in the ground, but it's really cool, the great things as they evolve over time in years 3, 4, 5, and 6. So with that, I think I'll turn it over to you, David, and tell us about the resources that you're recommending for us.
Great, thanks. So this is where we're starting to get into more of the interactive part of the webcast. We did a bit of a scan and we sort of talked with friends of CSN and started gathering together some resources that we all really like. But this is also a really good opportunity for you all to weigh in either in the chat box, or we may have some time before we wrap up today where we can open up the phone lines and take some calls to talk to you guys about things that you really like and recommend. So to kind of just start off with some of the comprehensive guides, if you want to dig in a little bit deeper, we're doing a really fast and dirty kind of overview today. But, if you want to, hear more about the CSN perspective, the manual that Tom mentioned that him and Cecilia worked on a couple of years ago is that CSN Homeowner Stormwater Controlled webcast. We have it for the visual and audio learners, as well as for the avid readers. So, we've got our video links in the top table and our paper links in the bottom. But it covers everything that we're talking today about rain gardens, but also goes into other resources for homeowner practices like our conservation landscaping, tree plantings, rainwater harvesting like rain barrel installation, as well as some just lawn tips if you are going that direction. For other folks, some things that I like, Marilyn Seagrant has a 6-part video series. It's a short series, maybe 2 to 3 minutes per video. that's available on the how to install a rain garden. I think it's pretty easy to digest, a pretty good series. If you're really plant oriented, you want to know about the kind of the horticultural elements. Penn State Extension did a webcast just a couple of weeks ago that I watched that I thought was a pretty good deep dive. It's an hour-long webinar that really kind of hones in on selecting the right plants for your rain garden based on the different planting zones and things like that. For again, on the manual side, besides the CSN Homeowners Guide, Maryland Extension has a Rain Gardens Across Maryland guide that's been around for about just as long as the CSN guide. Really comprehensive, a lot of really great local examples, good plant selection. If you want sort of the outsider's perspective, the University of Wisconsin Extension has a really good guide with some really good visuals in it, good diagrams and schematics. You know, you obviously pay attention to the plant selection. It might be a little bit different, but it's a guide that has actually been referenced by a lot of the state agencies across the Bay watershed as well, just from a design and planning perspective. As far as choosing plants, there's a lot of really good resources that can be overwhelming, especially for us stormwater folks that generally may not have as green of a thumb, you know, as some of our colleagues on the horticulture side. The Alliance for the Chesapeake has a good native plants for rain gardens fact sheet. It's about 2 to 3 pages. I like it because it's really simple and straightforward. It's pretty easy to read and kind of understand where each of the plant species should go in terms of the planting zones and things like that. It lays it out in a pretty simple way. If you really wanted to dive into the native plants, the Fish and Wildlife Service Native Plant Guide for Conservation Landscaping in the Chesapeake Bay has a really detailed guide with photos and things like that of all the different species. If you kind of know what you're looking for, or you just want to browse around and get a sense of what might aesthetically look good for you. And I'll let Beth talk a little bit about CBLP's Rain Garden Safari cards, but Shireen Hughes, who's a fan of or a friend of CSN and works with CBLP, has put a couple of resources in there as well for good native plant guides. Do you want to, Beth, say anything about the safari guides before I move on? Because I think the plant side is a strength of CBLP with a lot of the landscape folks that you guys have in your.
We'll talk about it in a minute, David. If you want to go ahead and then I'll just kind of fill in.
Okay, great. So, you know, in terms of the buying and finding seeds, this is something that I think is particularly appropriate to talk about right now because it's a little different than the normal landscape with, you know, things closing down or maybe having limited operating hours. But generally speaking, there are a couple of good places if you're looking for seeds. You know, Ernst Seed Company is really good if you want to explore your options. I think they have a good, you know, wide range of choices that are kind of sorted based on what you're looking for in terms of your landscaping objectives. They have some rain garden specific seed mixes and can help, you know, figure out what fits your need. Silva Native is right down the street from me. They're really good sort of on the wholesale side, and they're good for buying in bulk, but it does help a little bit more if you know what you want when you're going to their website. American Meadows is another good one. A lot of variety. You can search based on what you're looking for. They also have some helpful kind of how-to planting guides for seeds, since folks might not be as familiar with planting seeds as opposed to maybe plugs or container plants for rain gardens. If you're looking for plant nurseries, each state generally has some sort of resource list with different nurseries available, and so there's a couple links there where you can find out what's in your area depending on where you are in the watershed to find different native plants. And these are going to be a mix of wholesale and retail nurseries on here. But this is where we kind of have to, you know, step back for a second and do a reality check under the current circumstances. So since this webcast series is supposed to be focused for, you know, what we can do over the next month or two while we're at home, you do have to kind of keep in mind that while most of the nurseries and garden centers, the big box stores have been largely designated as essential, and so most of them are still open, their capacity is pretty limited. Some of them have closed their hours back a little bit. you know, you might not be able to go into the store, especially a lot of the smaller retail nurseries. You can't actually go in and browse what their selection is. You kind of have to handle things online or over the phone. And even with that, a lot of them are very busy, especially on the retail side, trying to keep up with demand with probably limited staff and things like that. So you may be looking at more wholesalers potentially, or bulk orders that you're doing online where things are being shipped to you. Curbside pickup is kind of a here or there. You know, given the stay-at-home orders in certain states, you know, curbside pickup, you can kind of, you know, make a determination based on what your state's guidance is. And then as far as homeowner assistance programs, rain gardens are a relatively inexpensive practice that you can put in, but you do have to order a decent amount of plant material. It can usually be, depending on how large your garden is, maybe $200 or so. And then you have your sand and your river rock. So it's not, you know, it's not nothing. And so depending on where you are, there are also homeowner assistance programs. These are sort of financial oriented programs. And Cecilia, I don't know if you want to talk a little bit when we get to the hacks about the River Smart programs, but I know there's a rain garden rebate program where you can get some financial assistance for rain garden installation in the district. Virginia's VCAP program, similarly, will offer, I think it's up to 75% of the total cost of your rain garden installation if you meet certain qualifiers, so you can apply for that. And then Maryland is sort of a, you know, depending on where you are in the state, different counties have programs. I think Montgomery County and PG County have rebate programs. Other areas like Baltimore City will give you like a refund off of your stormwater utility fee, things like that. So depending on how you, where you're located and how you implement. So the Bay Trust has a pretty good roundup of the different programs in Maryland if you want to check those out. And then I will also, since this is my last slide before I turn it over, I will kind of lead into Beth a little bit here and let you do a plug for the CBLP. If, as Tom mentioned, you don't want to do the work yourself, I don't know also who all is operating right now in terms of coming out and doing site visits and things like that. But maybe down the road, if you want a professional or a contractor, you can check out the certification list on CBLP's website to find some really good folks in your area.
Thank you. Great. Just a couple of other quick things before we get to Beth. So one of the realities is maybe it'll be difficult to get your native plants or the quantities of mulch that you want to do for the next month or so. Hopefully it'll get better, but if you can't find them, it doesn't mean you have to stop. You can dig the hole and wait on the plants. Give it some personal protective equipment, which is usually just staking it out with a black plastic, but make sure you don't like accidentally trap the mailman on his way to, he's going in. The other thing too is to think about going with an online wildflower seed mix of annuals and perennials. It's a great strategy. It requires a little bit less mulch. And there's usually 10 or 15, 20 different species that provide good seasonal color and great attraction for perennials. Wildflower seed mixes are a little bit hard to just put down. So seed balls are a great option where they kind of mix the seeds together with clay. So you can just kind of tamp them on the first half inch of soil. The only thing with the seeding, if you go that route, is perennials take usually 3 years to get really vigorous. So the first year, it'll be pretty dominated by the annuals in the mix, and it won't look that spectacular, and you probably get deflated and said, I'm a rain garden failure. But if you give it time, usually by the second or the third year, it looks pretty strong, and that's been the experience that I've had. So the next slide, assuming that you don't want to dig a hole and you don't have enough toilet paper to barter to get a friend's bobcat to do it for you, we have come up with, as we can only do here at the Chesapeake Stormwater Network, is our 2020 Conservation Crop Circle Challenge. And we'll have more details on this in a week or two, but I wanted to at least tease it for you. As you can see in the next slide, crop circles are, of course, a known commodity. We all know the aliens have been landing with their UFOs and where they abduct us and do unspeakable things to us, which we relate then in magazines in the grocery aisle section. But let's face it, you look at your typical crop circle, it has no pizzazz. So at CSN, we want to change that. So we've come up with some rules that you go to the least favorite part of your lawn to do a math exercise, create a circle with a 5-foot radius, and then remove the turf, loosen the soils, season with compost to taste, and plant the circle with plants that critters would find cool, and then take a picture of what it looks like by July 4th and send it to CSN. And we're going to have great prizes. We have about 5 years supply of Bubba's 2019 gardening gloves that we can provide, as well as we may have cash prizes as well. So that's probably the most exciting thing in my life, which tells you how bored I am with my life right now. So with that, we'll turn it over to someone who really knows what they're talking about, which is Beth. And Beth, all yours.
Awesome. Thanks. Thanks, Tom. I just had a couple of things that I wanted to respond to. This is great information. If you guys are like I am, and you are too lazy to do all that digging, just a couple of things that I wanted to toss out, and especially if you're having a hard time getting plants. I've actually been sourcing plants for a project that I'm doing for a property in Anne Arundel County, and it's a weird year for sourcing plants. So the wholesale nurseries are they're working. The retail nurseries are also working. They are all reporting that they have a lot of plants, but getting them is kind of weird. So things are a little slow, or pickup is a little different from normal. And I think, like many of us, they're experiencing this phenomenon of we're all working really hard, but it's taking us longer to do our job. So just want to put a plug in for using those local nurseries if you can. A lot of the native plant nurseries that you're going to find on those lists that David shared with you, those are going to be open to the public. So while you'll have a great plant selection from the wholesale nurseries, not everybody has access to those sources when you're working on your home garden, you know, if you're not working with a contractor. So do try to look for those local native nurseries, and you can also find plants at the big box stores. But I always try to steer people towards local growers, and you're likely to get better quality, especially if you're looking for native species. So that was just one thought I wanted to throw out there. So I think in all states in the Bay region, both the nursery industry and the landscape trade is considered essential. So we know that that means that most landscape professionals are working. They often have a different setup. They are running really small crews. Sometimes they only have one person in a truck for personal safety reasons. So I think just like if you are going to hire a contractor, do feel free to go look at our list online, but also just be patient because they're running much smaller crews than they're used to, and so things are taking a longer time. If you're looking for like a consultation, whether it's from a landscape architect or a designer, or if you are looking to one of the incentive programs that are run by the local governments that David and Tom mentioned, those programs are operating, but they're operating differently. So like everything, it's a little wacky. Some of them are not doing consultations. So, or they might be doing a consultation where you're walking around your garden with your iPhone. So I think just be prepared to be flexible and to be patient. I think those are really good things that we're all learning to exercise in all aspects of our lives. Just a couple other things before I speak to a few things in my slides here. We talked a little bit, Tom talked a bit about getting rid of your turf to build a rain garden. I, as I said, am too lazy to do all that digging. So a couple of ways that you can kill the grass, which are especially good if you are not able to source your plants right now. You could do all the preparation work, and then you can just let nature do its thing over the summer and come back and plant in the fall. If you want to do that, there's a couple different things you can do. One Tom mentioned, which is solarizing. So in essence, you're getting rolls of plastic sheeting. Those you can find at Home Depot. And you're going to use the metal pins that you would use for new sod or for anchoring landscape fabrics to hold that in place. So I use a clear plastic, not the black. The sun is able to penetrate that, and the sun's actually going to kill the turf grass. And if it gets good and hot, it will also help to kill some of the seeds in the seed bank underneath the turf. So you may have fewer weeds once that turf is dead. And then in the fall, you can simply take up the plastic and plant right through the remainder of the grass there. The other thing that you can do is something called sheet mulching or lasagna gardening, which is essentially just making layers with cardboard or newsprint and then a thick layer of mulch. And that also will kill the turf. So those are just a couple of suggestions. And then David, if you want to move ahead to the next slide. So a couple of questions that we thought of. Can we make the rain garden edible? I'm a little squeamish about this. So I'm a landscape designer by training, and I am not very keen on the cleanliness of roof water, but other people disagree. So I think it's really about your tolerance for or whether or not you're worried about what's coming off your roof. But definitely you could use edible plants. It's definitely a possibility, and you just need to do what you would do growing those edibles in any raised bed or in your garden. Make sure that you've got space for them to grow and also that they've got some support. All right, what else have we got? How do I make sure the deer don't find my rain garden edible? Such a good question. One is weaponry. So that's always a possibility, especially if you are living on large acreage. That is one way of keeping them out. Dogs are also a deterrent. I have a not very big fence in my backyard in an area where we have a lot of deer. They will eat everything in my front yard. They do never go in my backyard. And that's because I have dogs. So it smells of dog, and deer really don't like dogs. So that's one way. The best way is an 8-foot fence. Sometimes that's cost prohibitive. There are also repellents that can be used, everything from egg whites to urine of various animals. Those can be very effective, but you are going to have to apply them frequently in order to make them work. Fencing is really the best option, and you could simply fence a small area. I love the 8-foot black plastic mesh. It's very inexpensive. It's not like building a stockade fence, and it will keep your deer out of the garden. All right, what else have you guys got? Yeah, shade, and next slide. So shade is an issue for rain gardens. Most of our rain garden palettes tend to be sunny natives, but here's a few that I really like. Virginia sweetspire is a shrub. You can find this in the big box stores. You will find it in retail nurseries. You'll also find some of these perennials that I've listed here. There's a number of ferns that work really well in rain gardens. There's some sedges also that will work and that will tolerate some shade. One of my favorites is in the picture there, Pacora. It grows in the sun, it grows in the shade. That photograph is my front yard under mature white oak trees. So it is super shade tolerant, and it does not mind it being dry or wet. So those are just kind of my personal favorites. And what else have we got? Oh, just a word of caution. So if you are making a rain garden in the shade, chances are you're dealing with trees. So just a word of caution about making sure that you are not digging up the entire critical root zone of your tree. So keep in mind here, this little picture from NC State shows you what area around a mature tree you should protect. So the best is essentially not digging in the drip line, and better is extending that drip line beyond, or the protection area beyond the drip line of the tree. So that's just really important. And just to remember, like if you cut a trench, even just putting a downspout trench through the middle of a critical root area, you have essentially severed all those roots that are beyond the trench. And that is could be really, really detrimental to big trees. All right. Please don't plant English ivy or liripe in your rain garden. Use some plants that provide ecological benefits, as well as things that are really pretty. So that's just a little plus.
Hey Beth, I have a
Native
question.
good guys. Yeah.
For you. What about wood poppies? I know they do pretty well in the shade and they're native. Are they happy in a rain garden environment?
So if you put them up on the berm or on the side where they're not going to be in standing water, they probably do well. I don't think they're going to take inundation very well, but oh boy, they're blooming right now and they are so pretty.
They're so beautiful. I saw some yesterday, which made me think of it. Yeah.
I did too. Yeah, awesome. All right, do we have one more? Is that it? Oh yeah, this is my plug. So as David and Cecilia said, I direct this program called the Chesapeake Bay Landscape Professional. We have trained over 800 people in the last 4 years in the Bay region. And this is a new resource that we just put out for our certified pros, but it's available to everyone. And the idea is that we picked the best native plants for vegetated stormwater practices for the Bay region. So these are not strictly native to every corner of the watershed, but we tried to pick a wide geographic availability. So there's one card for each plant and they're clipped together, and that just gives you a sense of some of the features that we've identified for all of these plants. And then the next slide is just an example of one of the plant cards. So you guys can find these on our website. It's a really good plant list, and this is a pretty new thing that we just put out there. So I think that's it. Oh, such a good question. What to do if my rain garden doesn't drain? I think the first thing is really detective work, like what's going on. Making sure that you didn't put filter fabric underneath it. I think that's a really common reason that a rain garden doesn't drain. So not using that filter fabric, which can clog up underneath the rain garden. Did you fill out the little worksheet properly? So you're not putting too much water into that garden. Have you got an issue with your inlet somehow or your outlet? Those are some of my, the top things that usually go wrong. All right. That's what I got.
Well, thank you so much, Beth. That was a great synopsis, and thanks to David and Tom as well. I think we had some really good tips and tricks that were included there, and we've got a lot of dialogue in the chat box today. So I think if it's all right with everyone, I will field, oh, you are welcome to unmute your microphones and ask your questions or contribute your ideas and your own expert hacks that you have regarding this topic area. I know at one point Gretchen asked about converting a downspout that is currently fed into a rain barrel, if she could convert a rain barrel into a rain garden. And I think the answer there is if you have sufficient surface area to put the rain garden in, yes, you could take that rain barrel out and then have the inlet go straight into your rain garden, or you could use your rain barrel to irrigate your rain garden, although obviously that would take a little bit more coordination. And then hopefully, I know you also, Gretchen, you also asked about shaded areas, or at least partially shaded. So hopefully Beth answered your questions there. There are some species that do better in the shade that will still give you good coverage on your rain garden. So this doesn't have to just be a sunny spot.
That was my question. You know, my rain garden, the problem is it would be in a confined space, I guess I'll say, because right now, actually the rain barrel is gone, but it had been there. And it's behind a garage, which is tucked in next to a retaining wall. You know, like there's basically no space in this space. So I'm trying to think, you know, is this something I can practically even think about, or, you know, something else? So it's basically, right now the gutter system is set up to be draining the entire garage roof, which is, I don't know, just sort of a medium-sized standalone garage. So that's what I'm thinking about. I don't know if it's going to work. I don't have too much space, but I thought I would at least consider.
Yeah, that's a great question. So earlier I mentioned something like a stormwater planter, and I guess it was kind of hard to hear me, but it's the same idea. It's a rain garden basically, but it's elevated, so it's above the surface in a box. Sometimes you see them in a downtown area, so they're still able to treat stormwater, take stormwater. It's going to take a little bit more design, and there should be resources in the homeowner BMP guide. That's one of the resources linked in this webcast. But it's just basically tweaking. Instead of digging down into your existing soils, you're basically building it up, and you're just trying to do those volume calculations, as you just noted, based on the amount of contributing drainage area, so what's coming off of that garage roof, and you're sizing it accordingly. That would give you a little bit more treatment, and again, some flowers, some habitat, so that might be a better option. It's sort of an expanded rain barrel. The rain barrel, sorry, it's a little loud here at CSN HQ. Since the rain barrel is really just holding that water until you can use it at another time, whereas this would actually allow those plants to utilize that water.
Okay.
That might be a good option.
At your resources.
Any other ideas or questions out there? I'm glad Alana is into the CCCC idea. Is it a 5 Cs or 4 Cs? Well, it doesn't matter. Alana, we look forward to seeing your submission. David, will these submissions for the CCCC, maybe another C, go beyond CSN? Will they be shared in the newsletters so people can get some?
Certainly, yeah, we will figure out a way. I think we're still working on some of the details, but they will probably make their appearance in the newsletter. We'll probably have a little home on our website as well, so that folks can follow up and see how it's going.
Yeah, I know one year there was a Bubba's winner that was a residential one that has been shared so many times on Pinterest by landscape and architects and others who are looking for some of these homeowner hacks. And I know it's gone really far as a result. So
it was like 97% of our website traffic for a year or two there was from that one.
So we're looking forward to seeing everyone's great ideas for this one. Any other questions out there? Any other ideas? Any other hacks?
I will just note, while folks are kind of thinking for a second, I put it in the chat box, but a copy of the slides from today, a recording of the webcast, and then the fillable PDFs that we talked about are all going to be posted at the link I put in there, which is the link where you would have registered for today's webcast. I'll probably have the recording and the slides up on Monday. The PDFs are up there right now, and we can probably put a couple of other direct links on there as well. But by downloading the PDF of the slides, you'll be able to get all of the resource links that were in today's presentation and go directly to those.
There's so much great information in all those resources. I think the biggest challenge tends to be which information to focus on. I know that I feel pretty solid with the CBLP resources and also obviously the homeowner BMP manual, although that was written by a bunch of hacks, I think, for sure. Just kidding, it was me and Tom, so sort of. But yeah, I think the biggest challenge is finding a resource that works for you and that's for your specific geographic region, because obviously there are going to be some changes depending on where you're located. And then as far as some of these incentive programs go, Beth, I know you had asked this earlier. In DC, the River Smart program, it's not done. It's just a little bit on hold right now. People can still register to sign up for a stormwater audit, but because of the social distancing needs that we have right now, we're not really doing the audits per se. We'll just have to delay that to a future time. But I think you're also right. Montgomery County Rainscapes is still doing the audits, but they're doing it virtually with like a Zoom basically, and you guide the auditor around your property so they can try to give you some advice from afar. But I think having someone on the ground will be really helpful once this all clears up and we have a little bit more freedom in our movement.
I think there's a good question on here about slope for rain gardens. There's a couple good questions that are coming in through the chat box, but do you guys have any good tips and tricks for putting rain gardens if you have a little bit of a slope? I know there's some good diagrams and some design examples in the University of Wisconsin manual that was in the resource guide specific to slopes. But do you guys have any tips and tricks, anything folks should know if they're working in those sites?
So one of the, and we breezed through it a little bit, but it is more, it's spelled out in that homeowner BMP guide, is that one of your biggest challenges is trying to lose that soil, your existing soil that you're not going to reuse in your rain garden, to lose that elsewhere on site, because that can be a lot of soil and you don't want to have to pay to dispose of it. So if you do have a little bit of a slope, one of the tips or tricks could be to reuse some of that bad soil to build a berm on the lower end to make sure your rain garden is not spilling water out. And that bad soil is going to be really good at creating a barrier and not allowing water to seep through.
Yeah, so you could think about doing a series of terraces, every 5-10 feet, using your bad soil as, if you will, the little embankments between each one, and then backfilling with your topsoil and your sand media. So yeah, slope is tough, but it's not an insoluble problem unless it's like a 3-to-1 slope, and then you're kind of SOL. I shouldn't have said that, should I?
Yeah, I would agree with you, and I would also just add about the slope, like you, one of the challenges of planting a rain garden is making sure that those side slopes are covered with plant material so that you don't have soil movement and erosion there. And I think, if you, the most ideal thing is if you have a nice gentle slope, and as Cecilia said, you guys use some of that soil to create a berm on the downhill side of that gentle slope. That's the most ideal, I think, for a homeowner built rain garden.
Yeah, I find too, like when I mow around my rain gardens, where I have more than 3 or 4 inches of slope, I always mess up my lawnmower and it goes.
I think that that actually was a really, there was a question that came in about the edges and the plants. I'm just trying to locate it right now. So how do you deal with those pesky edges regarding like planting? So especially where it's bleeding into the turf areas. Any thoughts on that?
Yeah, and
if I understand this correctly, it's getting that vegetation along the edge to grow and not be overtaken by the surrounding turf.
So, I mean, I think the poor man's answer to that is just a really sharp spade once or twice a year. And just cut that edge once or twice a year. And also, like, think about what the plants are that you're planting on that edge, and maybe not plant the really wild spreaders right at the edge, but maybe something like a sedge that's a little bit more mild-mannered, shall we say.
If you think about it, people edging their sidewalks all the time, you can take that same approach to edging the sides of your rain garden. Or if you're really into plastics, you can do that, what is it, the 6 inches black plastic things and just put it in there.
Edge, yeah.
Don't do it. Don't do it.
I wouldn't do it myself, Beth, because I'm not a plastics person, but.
Yeah, they're just a problem. It's not going to hold up well.
And Andrew had something about missed utility only there's underground lines from street to house?
Yeah, they'll go from street to house, but not always in your backyard. So if you were worried about some sort of utility line back there, is there a way to, safely detect? I don't know if there's any easy tools that you can get a handle on, to kind of figure out if there's anything under there that you need to be worried about. But
honestly, I think that you're absolutely right. Whenever there's always all sorts of stuff underground that we don't know about. But a lot of times if you just do a little of that detective work that Tom was talking about, there's usually a sign. It's usually, there's some sort of sign, whether it's a manhole or a flag or an old marking that indicates there's something going on underground. Also look above, like if you're near an electrical pole, you probably want to make sure that you know what's happening underground. So something's feeding that. So that's usually your first step.
Yeah, although the other thing about engineers is they hate to lay pipe over a long distance. So one of the reasons why most of your sewer and drinking water and gas pipes go to your front of your house is that, if they're all from the street to your house, it's the shortest distance. So we don't often have a lot of utilities in our backyard. Not that I'll certify that in a court of law, but in most cases it's not a big issue. Well, the other thing too about overhead utilities, I've seen that so many times where people plant these nice little trees and shrubs in the rain garden and don't realize that in another 5 years, PG&E is going to come and whack it down because it's going into a power line. So think up, not only for power lines, but also for the solar exposure that your rain garden's going to get. And that is kind of a hard, maybe Beth has a better sense of how you kind of measure solar exposure in various parts of your yard to pick the right plants. Obviously, we know if it's underneath an oak tree or something, it's going to be shady, but.
Yeah, I think that's a really important consideration. If you've gone to the expense of putting solar panels on your house, you probably don't want to plant oaks or maples or tulip poplars, things that are hickories, things that are going to get really big and shade out those solar panels.
One idea too, since we wanted to make this really interactive to engage our families and our children, is I know with some of these practices we've done at schools, when you allow the children to pick out a specific plant and plant that plant, and they take care of it, they really enjoy watching it grow over time. So they sort of adopt their 1 or 2 plants in the rain garden and care for them. That might be another tip or trick for folks to make sure they get their families engaged in this.
Yeah, and I didn't mention it in the resources, but there are some pretty cool activities out there for kids where you can kind of do a mini container rain garden or something like that, where you can sort of see how they act, but in sort of a clear sided container or something like that, to kind of add in an educational lesson to kind of understand what's going on under the ground and things like that. So I'll see if I can find a couple of links for some information on those type of activities, and I'll throw them in to our website as well.
We had a really interesting question about, and this is a neat idea, like what if we just did an all turf rain garden? Any ideas from our experts on that?
Well, that comes from our fine friend, John McCutcheon. It's certainly doable. In certain neighborhoods, it's almost patriotic to have an all turf rain garden. However, what I'd probably recommend is to either shoot for annuals or perennials where, yeah, you get rid of all the mulch and you have 100% cover, but you mow it 2 or 3 times a year and let it grow up, 1.5 feet, 2 feet. So you're providing something for the critters and providing and Beth is probably much more expert than I am, a little bit of a landscaping interest, because while I love the emerald greens of Ireland, I'm half Irish, I like a little bit more landscape interest than just.
Plus, it helps our pollinators.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's the key for me is like turf grass has zero ecological benefit. So to the extent that you can make your rain garden provide some ecosystem services, that's like the thing to do. But if you want something that's really tidy and you don't want some wild jungle in your front yard, you could use just a palette of grasses. And as Tom said, you know, you mow that once a year and that's the maintenance.
That's great. That's really helpful. Another question came in talking about how you can incorporate rain gardens with dry wells. And I think that's a really great question, since a lot of times what drives the interest in putting a rain garden in is a larger storm event or standing water issues or basement flooding issues. I know that we get a lot of calls for our program whenever there's a large storm. So Tom, do you have any thoughts on that?
Yeah, two. One, just on basement flooding. One of the reasons why I have 5 rain gardens is because I used to have basement flooding 5-6 times a year. And since I put them in, it's only been like the one time, the 2018 Catonsville, Ellicott City 8-inch rainstorm. So that one, even my rain gardens couldn't defeat. But it is an effective technique. If you have basement problems, you probably should consult a professional. But the dry well should be closer to your home, and it should have a permeable filter fabric on your foundation, but also at the bottom, so that the dry well then would lead into a somewhat smaller sized rain garden, because some of the capacity would be taken up by the spaces in between the stones in the dry well, which for those of you who aren't stormwater geeks, a dry well is basically a hole in the ground filled with big rocks, and it's used to detain stormwater and move it in a direction that you want to. So you can combine these together. You can do a rain barrel to a rain garden to a conservation landscape, a lot of different options. But we thought today we'd just start with the simple things and let you all experiment and be thinking about those crop circles too.
All right, well, it seems like we've got a few good questions that came in, and I think we've addressed most, if not all. And I guess if you have future questions, you can email. Is that right, David? And we'll have the recorded version and the slides uploaded to the Chesapeake Stormwater Network's website. And we really appreciate you guys participating. We like any feedback that you have. Any other parting thoughts?
Just wanted to mention if you have a alley behind your house, you know, you might want to look at underground utilities in the backyard, because you do have water meters and things sometimes in the back if you have an alley. So, you know, you might want to check that, you know.
Excellent point.
Yeah, that's a great point. Safety is always your #1 concern. As we know right now, we're always focused on our PPE, but yeah, when you're digging, really, you want to put a little bit of effort into making sure that you're not going to hurt yourself or cut off your neighbor's water supply or things like that. Any last parting words from our expert, Beth Ginter from CBLP? Any other thoughts?
No, thank you. Thank you. This is fun.
Yeah, this has been fun. It's really appreciate you participating today, Beth. I think you shared a lot of great information that people will take back to the drawing boards in their backyards. How about you, David? Anything else?
No, just thanks everybody for joining. Keep an eye out for the next couple in our series. We're going to try to keep them, you know, informal and interactive like this. So if you like this, please feel free to pass it along and keep an eye out for the announcements for the next couple.
All right, well, have a great day. Bye-bye.
Thanks, everyone.
No, put my mask on now.
Bye-bye.
Bye. I think